We had a couple of our clients bring farm salmon to their hut at Bywell, and my jaw dropped, and I was like, "You're what?"
The upper echelons of salmon fishing need to get their shit together and actually sit down and work out what is the most effective way that we can operate, who do we need to empower as the message carriers, and how do we actually go about it.
Now today is International Wild Salmon Day, so we have a cracking all-star lineup for you. From the UK, we have a leading voice in modern fly fishing and conservation, the marvellous Marina Gibson. From Norway, legendary angler and broadcaster, the OG of fishing telly himself, Mr. Matt Hayes. And dialing in from Iceland, we have the no-bullshit conservationist and perennial salmon angler that is Vala Arnadottir. Now we're going to dive into what the UK, Iceland and Norway are getting right when it comes to salmon conservation, and also what they're getting spectacularly wrong. We're going to cover what we can learn from each other before our respective governments bugger it up for good. Season 3 of The Last Salmon is in partnership with Loop, driving change for wild fish and wild places.
At the moment, I'm putting together a video about the life cycle of the salmon. And I've spent many, many hours filming them, trying to overcome waterfalls and obstacles. I've hung off mountaineering harnesses and been struck by them as they're jumping up the falls. I've invested in camera equipment to film them in slow motion so that you capture the full beauty of it. I've spent hours and hours waiting just for one moment to record it. And, you know, we are kind of on the reserve fuel tank with Atlantic salmon. So if we don't do something now, it is going to be too late. And I think it is such an amazing creature, one of nature's miracles. I know that's a cliche, but it is. And for me, it's always been the biggest nature miracle. The fact that this fish, for millions of years, has taken the same migratory route, headed out to sea to feed, headed back down the coast, somehow found its own river, and in some cases found the piece of gravel that it was spawned on. It is the world's greatest sport fish, certainly in fresh water, so it totally and utterly deserves its own day, and it's incumbent on us. I think our role has changed over the years from being anglers, potentially you could argue exploiting the fish. But the irony of modern times is that we're their best chance. We've become guardians. And so I'm fully supportive of anything that raises awareness of this fantastic fish and brings home to people just how important it is that we don't lose it.
All three of you are very influential, I would say, in the world of salmon angling for one reason or another. But also, I think just as importantly, you do spend your time teaching others, whether that be through guiding or through influencing, I guess, for want of a better word. How important do you think it is, Vala, I'll start with you on this one. How important do you think it is that you teach salmon conservation first before you teach salmon angling? Because it strikes me that every single salmon angler now, by virtue of trying to catch this fish, is a salmon conservationist. Is that important to you when you're teaching people how to catch them?
Yeah, I think it happens actually like automatically. It's not like you're trying to even brainwash someone. It's just so dear to your heart that, you know, it comes out automatically. And when you're fascinated with something like Matt described the salmon, it's the most magnificent creature on earth. It's hard not to, you know, go into that and talk about it. I guess we all agree with that one. And I think like even the little things, I had a group of anglers who didn't want to do catch and release, and then all of a sudden they ended up with a blonde guide with them, and they were like hesitant they knew my perspective, and they were like, "Can I?" And I'm like, "I wouldn't do it." And all of a sudden they're like, "Why wouldn't you do it?" And then we got into like half an hour conversation. But I think it's just opening up, yeah, and learning about it, and then it becomes automatic a little bit.
And what about you, Marina?
I would say, like, do you not think that the salmon conservationists, it's almost become its own community of itself. Like, you've got us in the UK, you've got the Missing Salmon Project, you've got your stuff going on, the White Heart Project. Matt's doing lots in Norway. Vala, you're doing loads in Iceland. I just saw something about puffins and Off the Table, and it's becoming a community of itself. It's not even where you don't necessarily really talk about catching salmon at all. Also, I don't think you can even start salmon fishing without knowing all of the stuff that comes with it, with how they're in decline, and because there's so many projects going on in the background for wild Atlantic salmon. So I think everyone coming into the sport are very wary of that on day one.
I'm just thinking, Matt, though, it's a bit of a different story perhaps for you over in Norway. The majority of people there, we've spoken about this at great lengths in previous episodes. It's a bit of a bigger tanker to turn around and getting them involved in salmon conservation as opposed to just angling. It's not necessarily hand in glove over there, is it? Due to the culture, shall we say?
No, I mean, to return to your original question, like, is it something we should do or might do or do because we feel like it's not? It's a duty, man. When you look at the situation in Norway, I'm wearing a number of hats, right? So my first hat is I'm a landowner here, and I run the fishing on a few kilometres of this river, and I rule it with a rod of iron. I'll admit that, and I construct rules that I believe are balanced and sustainable. And if people don't like those rules, they don't fish here. There's no, and I have had people who believe they're entitled to fish here because they fished here for the last 60 years. And I think I should just throw it open to them and let them do what they want. But I won't, because I understand the urgency of the situation. And on Gowler, there has always been this huge discussion in Norway about catch and release, right? Catch and release is accepted in every other civilized part of the world. But it ain't here because people, and rightly, cling to a traditional viewpoint whereby they want to harvest an amount of salmon. And you can argue about how much that is, but that's what they want to do. However, we don't live in the times of plenty anymore. The times have changed, and there is a very stark choice available to us in Norway. We either create the right rules and teach people to put the fish back properly. And I'll tell you what our rules are for this season in a minute. They shouldn't be controversial, but they are. If we don't do that, as a landowner, I won't have a business. So, I'm making decisions. Finance doesn't matter to me. I don't take any money out of this. I don't care. I'm not in it for that. But the point of the matter is that unless this thing is sustainable, unless the river is sustainable, and the return of the fish is sustainable, and the management of the fish is sustainable, then I might as well pack up and go home. So whether people like it or not, for me, the two things go hand in glove. There's no separation. In being a modern fly fisherman these days, whether you like it or whether you don't, you are a guardian of the waterway. That's the role that we have to take on. Fly fishing's evolved. And fly fishing for salmon has evolved. So I don't think there's anything about this that's difficult to understand. You either believe in it or you don't. And for me, if you want to fish for salmon, or you want to fish for salmon on my water, then you better cowboy up, because I'm not going to let you treat them badly. It's as simple as that. Other people feel differently. But for me, Jim, it's our duty, and the two things go together. It's one thing, not two things. It's one thing.
I couldn't agree more, and I guess that's an interesting way of coming into my next question. I was going to ask you all, what's the biggest thing your country, and by yours, I'm pertaining to Norway, Matt, your country gets right when it comes to salmon conservation, and what's the biggest thing it gets wrong? So let's continue with you, Matt. I'm guessing that you're going to say wanting to harvest and refusing to turn on to catch and release in any great numbers is the biggest thing you get wrong, if you had to pick one thing?
Think about this. It beggars belief. Catch and release is a management tool. It's not the be all and end all. It's not the only thing I do to ensure that we get good spawning here. There are other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
However, I spoke to Ava Thorstad. I did an interview with Ava, and in fact, it's in my upcoming video. Ava Thorstad works for NINA, which is the Norwegian Institute for Nature Research, and she's one of the smartest women I've ever met. And she's certainly among the world's top salmon scientists. She knows her stuff. And I said to her, if we don't molest these fish, if we return them, best practice, put them back in the river, what's the survival rate? She said, it's over 99%. I said, okay, how many times can Gowler salmon spawn? Up to 6. Up to 6 times.
Is that unique? Is that unique to well, it won't be just unique to Gala, but is that a Norwegian Viking style Atlantic salmon, or can ours do that?
Viking.
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I mean, comparing Norwegian salmon to those in the rest of the world is like comparing the Incredible Hulk to Robin.
Yeah.
There is there's a genetic strain of fish. These are tough fish. They come into some of the biggest rivers, etc., etc., etc. And I don't know the answer to your question whether that is something special to Gowler. I suspect it's for Norwegian rivers generally.
Yeah.
But the point of the matter is that the fish that you need to protect are the big fish, because they're going to be the multi-spawners. So if you're going to harvest fish, do it sensibly, but bear in mind that if you kill 20% of the fish that enter the river every year, your salmon are never going to reach their maximum number of spawning appointments.
I mean, I'm currently engaged in a debate, shall we say, is a polite way of putting it, with some, in my humble opinion, utter idiot that killed a 53-pound cockfish on the altar over the weekend. And I'm engaging with this guy, and he's a local northern Norwegian man, and obviously he's hiding behind his culture and the rules of the altar. So whilst it's difficult to argue with somebody who has it deeply ingrained in their culture, his arguments, and his two arguments are this, and I'm only bringing this sort of personal tete-a-tete I'm having into this podcast because I think it's relevant to what you're saying here, Matt, and what NINA are putting out. He says it's the rules, so it's okay, which is mind-baffling to me why the altar allow this. But also he tells me, when I start talking to him about the DNA strain, and this is a very, very brilliant specimen of a cockfish, that lets it go and spawn. This DNA is rare within rare of that subspecies that is the altar fish. He tells me that's nonsense, and that this fish has spawned many times before, and that DNA has been spread. So therefore, that absolves him of that argument and reconciles his kill. Is that what we're dealing with when it comes to? I know that's an extreme, and I'm not obviously brushing Norwegian anglers all with the same stroke. But how are we going to combat that? To me, that kind of utter, unforgivable, reprehensible type of angling.
Well, can I just say that I too have caught a 55-pound salmon, and it had been at sea for 4 sea winters, and it was a first-time spawner.
Wow.
So there you go.
Just throw that in.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, you've heard enough of me.
Yeah. Okay. I hear what you're saying. Vala, your country's biggest mistake and biggest win when it comes to the conservation of wild salmon?
I'd say biggest wins. I think we have done some phenomenal job over the years keeping, a certain amount of few rods on the river, so it's not overfished. We have rules regarding a lot of stuff, how many hours you can fish per day, how many rods are in the river. Almost all rivers in Iceland now are catch and release only. And I think, even the ones that were returning, because you were saying sometimes anglers still want to go their old ways, and I've done it all my time. And it's like, yeah, and then your grandkids can't fish anything. But great plan. You know, I think what is needed is the rules, because it has showed itself time and again here in Iceland that once the rules change, it's not like the river is lacking anglers. You know, some of the old ones, they come again, and then you get a new set of anglers who are passionate about that and care. I think our biggest mistake for sure is allowing open net pen to even start here at all. And I think that's a huge mistake.
Whilst it's a busted flush in Norway, they let that hare out the trap 50 years ago. The Icelandics only did it in the last 10 years properly, and what a grave mistake that will turn out to be, right? Marina, what do we get right here in Blighty, and what do we get spectacularly wrong when it comes to wild salmon?
I would say that the really great projects that are going around in our charities, although sometimes I suppose there's a slight separation between some. I would say that the best thing we have are our organizations, and like, you know, the Atlantic Salmon Trust, Wild Fish, you've got Missing Salmon Alliance, you've got so many people and so many organizations and charities who really care. And then of course your new one, White Heart. There's so many really amazing initiatives and projects going on in this country. I would say, I think that there needs to be like a worldwide handling policy on, kind of a bit like the steelhead, where there needs to be a way that you handle an Atlantic salmon, because even now still, you know, you log on to social media and you still see terrible handling. And it's like, you know, if you're releasing this fish, handle it properly, handle it with care, and get it back as quickly as possible. And the steelhead approach is that if you're, of course, wet hands, no gloves, keep it in the net, don't drag it up on the rocks or grass, keep it in the water. If you want a picture, don't lift it out of the water. Keep part of its body, its gills, touching the water, and it takes 2 seconds to get a quick snapshot of your catch, and then let it go. And usually if you do that, and you don't handle it too much and you let it go that quickly, the fish, darts back. It doesn't have to be held for minutes, facing upstream to get its breath back. Usually you all you have to do is push that fish in the direction of the river, and it's gone. So I think, and it's funny because when I was doing a women's thing the other day, and we were talking about handling catch, and we were saying, keep at least one part of its body touching the water. And someone said, "Oh, is there like a policy on this?" And I said, "No, but there is. Like, how come steelhead have a policy, but Atlantic salmon don't?"
It's interesting. Yeah. But I think, whereas it might be, if I could offer this up, the steelhead are very, very geospecific, aren't they? And the problem is, because of how spread out the Atlantics are, you've got so many people involved, so many different governments, so many different fisheries, so many different opinions, should I say. But that's a really good point. Fish handling. Next, that brings me on to my next question, actually. If there was a unified policy that Norway, Iceland and the UK could all agree on tomorrow when it came to wild salmon conservation, and you're not allowed to say aquaculture because that's a given, what might it be? Matt, first offering from you, and let's see if the girls agree.
Let's put this choice as starkly as we can, shall we? If we don't do it, if we don't catch and release, if we don't adopt best practice with handling the fish and ensure that they swim away, as Marina said, in strong condition, if you don't take them out of the water, they power off most of the time. Then they'll close the river. So that's the bottom line. That's the choice that anglers face. Now, there's a substantial number of people out here who would opt for closing the river. They'd rather fish every few years, harvest some fish, let the numbers recover, harvest some more. It's a legitimate viewpoint. But what it won't do is it won't protect particularly the big fish, and eventually salmon angling will wither on the vine because nobody will have anywhere to go, which is crazy. The challenge now is to widen it. To the softest underbelly is other anglers. Fishing is siloed. When I grew up, you were an angler. You'd fish off the pier when you were in Ilfracombe on your holidays in the summer. You'd fish, I'd fish anywhere. I didn't draw any distinction between what I fish for, how I fish for it. Nowadays, you're a barbel fisherman, or you're a pike specialist who's specialising in, using critically weighted lures or whatever, or you fish for dace or chub or whatever, marlin, bonefish, tarpon. So there is a massive group of individual people who we need to bring into the fold first because they're the softest target.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we fail. We've become too specialised. The media and everything that goes with it has become very, very siloed. And what we've got to do is knock some of them silos down and appeal to people as anglers.
How are we going to knock down those walls realistically with the current fisheries system, with the current landowning system? Vala, in Iceland, we know what it's like over there. It's a very expensive thing to do, especially if you're not from Iceland. I'm not saying locals get any particular dispensation. Marina, everyone thinks salmon fishing is what posh people do. They put on their tweeds and go up to Scotland. And Matt, I'm sure it's different in Norway, right? It's because those rivers are open, but you've got to remember what it's like for the great majority of salmon to recruit the support we need. If people think it's not for them, it's not accessible.
Well, you've got the stars here. No, I'll do my part, but I've got less miles left in the tank than these two.
Okay, so
and they're young, and they're smart, and they're good anglers, and they get it, and you've got to empower them. And salmon fishing, the upper echelons of salmon fishing need to get their shit together and actually sit down and work out what is the most effective way that we can operate, who do we need to empower as the message carriers, and how do we actually go about it?
Okay, so we've got the cast, we've got Marina, we've got Vala. It's your job to encourage angling, salmon angling, to open it up to everybody, which you do so brilliantly in your various ways. How difficult do you find it, though, coming up against the issues I've just voiced?
I would just say that, and Vala's, I'll be interested to hear what Vala says, because basically, I think it's quite hard to get people into salmon fishing in the UK right now because it's really hard to catch a salmon these days. And if someone is going to, learn how to salmon fish, it's probably going to take them a while to catch one, unless you're really lucky, unless maybe you've got yourself onto a good syndicate, club water, or you've got a trip to, and that's the problem, is that a lot of the beats that hold a lot of the fish are really expensive in the UK. So, I think that if we can have an increase in the population increase of the amount of fish that are coming back, then I could see that a lot more people and a lot more young people will get into salmon fishing. But the thing is it could be different for Iceland because, you can go to Iceland and you can, I dare say, pretty much guarantee that you'll catch a fish. There are times obviously where the water's super low and you're having a bad year, but it tends to be a lot more easier. And I think that, and Vala, you can tell us now, like how many young people, how many women, children, young people, guys getting into salmon fishing.
I think it's fair to say, you can't say, no, everybody can do it. And then you have to afford it. But then on the reality side, there are ways to, I guess, like share the rod, do times that are less expensive and so on. I think the young people in Iceland in general now are mainly the ones that are coming into the salmon fishing are coming from the trout fishing background and people that have been doing that for a while because it's maybe easier and more accessible at the start. And I think it's also like I don't know much about trout, and it baffles me when I try to pick all the flies and stuff. But I think it's a great background and how people have been then increasing their fly fishing for salmon time. But I think in Iceland, at least in general, I find that we have such a strong heritage or roots to the salmon. A lot of people have been fishing at some point in their life. Somehow it seems very close to us in Iceland, even like people I talk with in the supermarket, and they're not anglers at all. And they're like, you keep on going, but they're not interested in even going fishing and stuff like that. So I think maybe from the conservation perspective, coming also in that they don't necessarily need to be, anglers. Like Marina was saying, there's almost like two communities, even though it was born from the angling community, but it's gotten so much larger that at least we all probably have a lot of friends working in conservation that aren't even fishing. And
it's interesting listening to you all. And Matt, I'm going to ask you to take your Norwegian hat off and put your British one back on for this point. Listening to the Norwegian and the Icelandic argument, it's endemic in your cultures. The salmon is absolutely rooted so deeply in your culture, whether you're an angler or not. It's very much part of your culture. Yet in the UK, and I think that's really important, by the way, for the conservation of salmon. And I think it's something that we really need to ramp up, because that way we amplify the cause beyond angling. And it's a really interesting story, and it's a really interesting fish, and all the wonderful reasons why we love salmon. But in the UK, we don't celebrate the culture of salmon, and yet we have a deep, deep connection to this fish that go back millennia. Matt, growing up here, I don't know how you felt. You said you always wanted to go salmon angling because you read about it in the magazines. Marina, obviously, you grew up salmon fishing, but looking at it from the outside in objectively, do you agree that there is a huge amount of ground to cover in reminding this country of its cultural connection to this seminal fish?
Well, yes. I mean, I would argue that Scotland is probably the spiritual home of salmon, certainly fly fishing. So there's an enormous heritage amount there. But I think Marina and Vala made great points about the fact that, if you did manage to interest all these people, there ain't enough fish to go round. So at the moment, I don't think that's the mission. I think the mission is to influence people who are probably not salmon anglers. Jim, I've never played professional football, but I still love it. The point is that there are large numbers of people in the world now who are receptive to messages about wildlife conservation. There are lots of other anglers who I think would be interested in what goes on with salmon. Maybe some of them would drop our way, maybe some of them won't. But I'd rather have them on my side, because I don't know what the salmon anglers is in the world. I mean, it's probably in the tens of thousands, I would imagine. Possibly low hundreds, I don't know. But I know that there's a lot of anglers in the world. And, I honestly think that the message that we need to carry to people is that this is an amazing fish with an amazing life story. It's our heritage. It's part of our history. We can't lose it.
Yeah.
It's not a difficult argument to win, but you've got to get that argument played out in front of enough people. And that's where people like Vala and Marina come in, because they're going to speak well for the sport. They look the part, they know what they're talking about, and we just have to empower. We've got to widen this message and decide who are the targets. As I say, other anglers are a very soft underbelly, but as they've rightly said, so are conservationists. The whole thing's kind of wrapped together now. And, but I agree with Vala and Marina that there's just not enough fish to go round for us to try and save the salmon by getting more people to fish for them.
Yeah, I mean, Marina, what do you think? We've got 50p. We got salmon on 50p's now, but every time I show those 50p's to kids, they have no idea what a salmon is. And if I tell them it's a salmon, they want to eat it, and that's the kind of affiliation they make to this fish. Do you think culturally we are we're pretty poor at passing that down, at passing the lineage, this wonderful story, this provenance of this fish down to the next generation?
Oof, I think it's a really hard one to know how important a wild salmon is to a non-angler who has nothing to do with fishing. I if we could figure out this, if we could figure out a way to get to, to make the wild salmon a national treasure outside of our world, I think that's that's where we want to be. I did, interestingly, whilst I was doom scrolling the other day, I came across a post from a sister of someone who was in Made in Chelsea. She's an influencer for herself. I think she's got like 200,000 followers or something on Instagram. And she was posting about food that she would eat every week. And she posted saying that she was eating trout. And I was like, oh, my ears pricked. And she said she doesn't eat farmed salmon anymore because she's seen lots of stuff about it and she's turned over to trout. And I was like, they're listening, you know? Like, really unexpected person is saying she doesn't eat farmed salmon in front of her audience. And for me, that was like, okay, something's working here, something's clicked.
Aquaculture is a great thing for us all to hang our hats on, and because it does penetrate beyond the walls of angling, because everybody eats and most people eat salmon, rightly or wrongly. But my worry is that we are pinning all our hopes on aquaculture being the biggest baddie of them all. And whilst we know it is very, very bad for the wild salmon stock and the environment in general, in laser gunning, in laser focusing, making that enemy number one, are we at risk, do you think, of distracting from other massive challenges this fish face? That's a bit of a concern of mine as we all jump on the aquaculture wagon. Or maybe is the aquaculture wagon a great jump-off point to learn more about the other challenges? I don't know. What do you think, Vala? I know in Iceland it is a massive contentious topic.
I was at a NASCO meeting last year and they were pinpointing the threats. It was, open up pens, global warming, and so on. I think fish farming, it's kind of like fixing a tire of your car, but the engine is broken. So unless we fix farming, and we know that it's a big threat and we know what it does, and unless we, tackle that problem, I think all the other stuff we're doing and we should continue to do is really important. So I think like the other problems are, that they are maybe smaller, like the broken tires and stuff that we can improve on. But I think, the fish farming needs to get out.
Needs the biggest attention. Matt, I'm guessing you have similar feelings, especially if you're speaking on behalf of Norwegian salmon.
Well, I think what they're saying is right. It might be a bit of a stuck record with the aquaculture thing, but it will deliver us what we want. It's the only route that will. Look, I talk about fishing on Facebook, YouTube, and X, Twitter as was. And on Twitter and X, I don't get anything like the number of responses that I get on Facebook. But I can tell you this, I get a better reception for salmon-related issues on X than any other platform. And something like 70% of the people that actually follow me or regularly comment on such subjects don't go fishing. They're not interested in fishing. But they are interested in not being poisoned when they're eating their food and the toxins, etc. It's a good message, Jim. And at the moment, within the current environment, it's such a massive thing that for me, it is the thing that you've got to pin it on, because it will provide the gateway to the most people. And I think Vala made a really good point about, you've got the engine. Once that stops, everything breaks down. So by far, it's the biggest fault. The tyres, yeah. How many fish do you let go? How long do you allow the salmon seas to be full? All that sort of thing. Yeah, you can mess around with them. But the one weak, vulnerable spot that we've got to push back against, I think, is the aquaculture, because it resonates, mate.
Just to say that next week, the second episode of The Last Salmon, we have Ben Hadfield, the MD of Maui Scotland, the CEO of Canada, and I think Faroe Islands, a big wig at Maui. And we listened to him and we gave him the floor, and he will tell you that the amount of people eating farmed salmon is, the graph is doing that. We are talking hundreds of millions, as near as damn it, and they are expanding due to popular demand. Of course, he's going to say that. So, whilst it's really encouraging to hear that we are spreading beyond the world of angling and salmon conservation when it comes to the detrimental effects and how plainly revolting farmed salmon is, it's also very alarming to hear that it is growing as an industry, probably bigger than any other food industry right now. The protein industry, of which salmon farming is a big part of. So it's interesting. I'd love to hear your comments and your reactions to that conversation when it comes out, but it wasn't particularly, of course. He's going to spin it as he is going to spin it, but it was very disheartening to listen to what Ben had to say. So I think what I'm trying to tell you in a very long-winded way is we need to keep punching, and we need to keep punching up as hard as we can, because it's a big leviathan of an industry that we're trying to change people's habits and create awareness around. Sorry, Marina, I stole the microphone for far too long there.
I've just had these stickers made because I heard that, and so I heard that we had a couple of our clients bring farm salmon to their hut at Bywell, and my jaw dropped, and I was like, "You're what? You've got farm salmon in the hut at Bywell?" So
just hold that closer to your camera.
It's a bit tongue-in-cheek because obviously I don't want our clients to not come back, but hopefully they get the message. So then my next point is that I'm not sure whether this is the same in Iceland and Norway, but I think that we have dramatically forgotten about our tributaries as a first, but also a lot of our waterways are backed onto farms, whether that be cattle or whether that be arable. Spreading manure. I know there's lots of laws and regulations, but it still feels like our rivers are much too close to man-made things. So I think that it would be good to have more buffer zones. I personally think every waterway should have a buffer zone, and it should be protected by what's growing naturally around that river, and then also the tributaries. I think that even landowners. I think if you own a tributary, I think it's your responsibility to look after that tributary. And I think, a lot of those places where it used to be a spawning ground for many different species, some have dried up, others are overgrown or inaccessible to these species. So yeah, I think that's especially in the UK, something very important that we need to look at.
I think that's a very good point. And if I was to ask myself the question, what do we get spectacularly wrong in the UK? That would be my answer. I think we openly ignore how vulnerable our rivers are to agricultural pollution and water industry pollution. And the salmon, as resilient and as adaptable as they may be, they cannot swim through oil, human feces, chicken, phosphates and nitrates caused by agricultural pollution. So absolutely, that's something that needs addressing. With regards to pollution, and we can wrap this up pretty quickly, because I think it's possibly a non-starter. I may be wrong. I mean, obviously everyone has pollution, but Matt, the Norwegian rivers, is agricultural pollution a distant second to the problems agriculture pose the salmon?
Well, no one really knows because no one measures it.
Oh.
I mean, I live in a small place called Singsos, and Marina will vouch for this because she's been here. I mean, it really is in the middle of nowhere. However, farming in Norway is largely small-scale farming. There are very few big collective operators. There are some, but there aren't many. Now, if I went over the road with my little testing kit in a minute and dipped it into the water and came back with some bad news, and I then reported that to the local community, I would never rent the fishing here again. My family would have to wear black sackcloth and ashes for the rest of their lives. So the answer to your question is, it might be controversial, but that never stopped me in the past. I don't know, Jim. I suspect we had a chicken farm on the banks of the river here down in Sturham for quite a long time. So I'm pretty sure that although Gowler might not be polluted as a lot of British rivers are, and Norwegian rivers aren't as polluted, I think it would be really silly to suggest that there isn't a problem there. There will be one.
Yeah.
It's just that no one's got the balls, me included, to actually go out and find it because if I go out on a limb with something like there's bigger battles for me to fight. If I thought that was a critical threat, then I'd take it on.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question is, mate, listen, get rid of the idea that somehow Norway is more green and environmentally friendly than other countries, because it isn't. It's just got less people.
Yeah.
Your behaviours can be the same as they are with people in England, but the impact is not going to be as severe.
Thanks, Matt. So normally we've had both Matt and Marina on the show before, and we've asked you where you would fish and who you would fish with if it was your last day on Earth. So before I ask, because I don't want Vala to feel left out, and I very much am interested in hearing her answer anyway. But before we ask her that, and then I'm going to ask you all something arguably much more important on International Salmon Day, which is what can we do? What do you want from the audience? But before we do that, Matt, just remind me of what you said.
Number one, I worship my grandfather. He was a wonderful fisherman. He grew up in the industrial Midlands. He was a welder during the war. He used to weld ships. And he could fish matches, coarse fishing matches, but his big passion was to go and fish for salmon and sea trout. He didn't have much money. He did have a car. It wasn't a very good one because they weren't in those days, but he used that car to travel as much as he could in the United Kingdom. And most of the time, given his choice, he would go and fish for salmon and sea trout. And I would like to bring him back just for one day to take him over the road and have a day with him.
That's right.
On this river. The other one is my dad's not very well at the moment, and he's got dementia, as many.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's how it is, mate. But if I was really pushed, I'd have a day on the cut with my dad.
Brilliant. So you're going with your dad, and you
on the canal, gudgeon
fishing on the canal. Right, Vala. Here we are. Spotlight's on you. You have the stage. It's your last day on Earth. You can fish anywhere in the world, and you can pick anyone you want. Where would it be, and who would it be with?
Boy, last day on Earth. But I actually, Matt's answer kind of made me cry. I was going to say first I was like, okay, if I can take someone, I'd take someone who's powerful enough to ban import of open at salmon in the US or something. But that is probably who I'd want to fish with, would be my dad as well. I've been fishing with him since I was a kid, and I love every single minute of it.
Great choice. Although I don't know whether you catch many fish if you're fishing with Arnie Balderson, because he does catch them.
he does catch them, but well, you can play some tactics. You can take away
I
some
bet.
flags. You can
I bet.
lose his car
And where would you?
keys.
And where would
Tie
you go,
his
Vala?
knots.
Where would you go with your dad? Yeah.
Where would I go? I actually have
Yeah.
had this kind of, I think probably so many places I want to go. I want to go to the Flowers River in Canada. I want to go to Russia. I've never been there. But probably what first comes to mind is there's a river called Kjarrá in Iceland that has these little pockets. And ever since I found out that when my dad was young, he and his friend rode horses up there. So you can get even higher up the river where nobody fishes it, nobody touches it. And that's where I want to go.
Thank you, Vala. I was really looking forward to hearing your answer on that, and you did disappoint. Thank you. Okay, so it being International Salmon Day, Wild Salmon Day, where it's all about the salmon, as if this podcast wasn't already salmon-centric enough. I'm going to ask each of you, what do you want your audience or this audience to do for you today for the salmon? You have one ask of them. First question to you, Vala.
Okay, can I do a little backstory, very short?
Of course.
Yeah. So when I was in Scotland, I was talking to the chef, and in the conversation, he brought up that there was recently done a study in schools, and I think this applies to so many places that kids, I think it was in kindergarten and young kids at starting school, they couldn't name where the milk comes from and stuff like that. So I think that coming back to the salmon, not eating salmon, but thinking about, nature and spending time in nature. So I think my ask would be to going back to our roots and telling your kids some fun fact about salmon. It's actually really fun to Google it and share it with your kids, because like the fact that they use the magnetic field to, find their way about there's something really magical about that. Check how high they can jump. There are
Love
so
it.
many things that
You're asking your audience, our audience, anyone listening, to Google a fun fact about salmon and share it with your kids or share it with anybody. I think that's a very easy, achievable, and valiant request. Thank you. Love it. Finally, Marina, International Salmon Day. What are you asking of the audience on this special day?
So I've got a couple of things. The first one is I just wish that industry leaders would stop serving farm salmon. So, for example, Gleneagles, like huge hotels and restaurants, they still sell and serve a hell of a lot of farm salmon every day. And it's, even people or, companies who are connected to wild salmon and should really know about what's going on. They need to, I hope that they would take it off the table. So that would be my first one. And then for a community thing, you can watch things like Dirty Business, which I've just finished. I'm a bit late to the party because I was away. But this made me want to move out of the UK, and follow Matt, because it is it's disgusting. Like the way that our waterways are treated, the way that our people are, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because although it's really bad what's happening, it has got, the non-angling community really interested and invested in cleaning up our waterways. So if you can kind of, watch anything that you can on this pollution stuff, or because at the end of the day, that has a knock-on effect to Atlantic salmon, to other things that are in the river, living around the river as well.
Brilliant. Love it. So you want people to invest more time in watching shows like Dirty Business and get talking and challenge and push for change. I I think that is that right? Is that fair to reflect?
Yes.
On
And
the second
industry
one.
leaders, stop serving farm salmon, please. Because
Exactly.
if a huge hotel chain stops selling farm salmon, it means that the suppliers, they go, oh, we've just lost our biggest client. We need to change something. We need to, whether that's how the aquaculture is run, whether that's land-based, whether that's trying something else. But it can only change if these huge industry leaders stop serving it and stop buying it.
I couldn't agree more. And the problem we have, of course, is it's cheap to scale when it comes to mass catering, and they're still hanging on to some antiquated notion that smoked salmon, at least, is a classy thing to eat. So I think absolutely, I think those in positions of power, responsibility, and influence should take the mantle and stop serving farm salmon.
We stopped serving. We've served farm salmon here. Marina knows because we've been here. We've got a restaurant and a pub, which is part of our business. And actually, salmon fishing is a very, very small part of what we do. Not at all profitable compared to our business, which is catering and, the restaurant. And we wondered how it would be if we took farm salmon off the table. But we did. We did it 3 years ago, and we replaced it with whitefish, which are very plentiful over here and can be netted, I mean, personally, I think that they taste like a sack of the proverbial, but Norwegians like them, and it's one of the best things we've ever did. The local people, when we tell them the reasons why we've done it, they're totally supportive. And this is a group of people who ordinarily wouldn't give it a second thought. So it does work, and it can be done.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. My ask is today on National Salmon Day, International Salmon Day, should I say, is that we keep having conversations like this, is that representatives from Iceland, Norway, UK, Canada, Europe, wherever there are Atlantic salmon, indeed, wherever there are salmon, we need to keep talking because in my experience over the last few years, now that we've engaged, we're forming a stronger coalition, we are making more inroads than we've ever made, and it's all down to communication. So can we keep having conversations like this, whether it's on camera or off camera? Because I think that is the way to drive change. That's what I want. Thank you very much for coming and joining us, Iceland, Norway, and the UK. Marina, Matt, and Vala.
It was a lot of fun.
That was
Thank
so
you.
good. Well done, everyone.
Right, you lot, before you disappear, we have one simple ask. What can you do today to help save the wild salmon? Comment, share, tell us on socials. All ideas are welcome, and we read everything.